Have you ever caught yourself biting your tongue in the middle of an argument, thinking, it's not worth it? I'm bigger than this? You tell yourself you're choosing peace, that silence is strength, that letting go means you've evolved. But let's be honest, how often is that really peace, and how often is it fear wearing a nice face? We live in a culture that worships politeness like it's a moral compass. From the time we're little, we're told, be nice, don't talk back, don't make a scene. We grow up believing that staying quiet makes us good people. But there's a problem with that idea. Because while silence might keep the surface calm, underneath, something starts to rot. And you can feel it. Think about it. How many times have you walked away from a conversation replaying the words you wanted to say but didn't? How many times have you smiled while someone disrespected you just to keep things civil? We've been taught to confuse suppression with strength. But strength isn't silence. Strength is standing in truth, even when your voice shakes. Yet most of us have been conditioned to do the opposite, to smile when we want to scream, to nod when we want to walk away, to sacrifice our peace for someone else's comfort. And society applauds us for it. The world loves the easygoing person, the one who never causes trouble, who always understands, always forgives, always smooths things over. But here's the truth, being endlessly understanding isn't noble, it's exhausting. It drains your soul drop by drop until you no longer recognize your own reflection. You start to think your feelings don't matter, your opinions don't matter, you don't matter. You convince yourself that by avoiding conflict, you're keeping harmony, but what you're really doing is building resentment brick by brick, until one day it becomes a wall between you and your authentic self. The irony is that this culture of fake peace doesn't make relationships better. It makes them weaker. When you refuse to speak up, when you constantly swallow your truth, you don't create connection, you create distance. People can feel when you're holding back, when you're pretending. They might not name it, but they sense it. And over time, the unspoken turns into tension, the tension turns into anger, and the anger turns into emotional disconnection. You tell yourself you're keeping the peace, but the truth is, peace built on silence is just avoidance dressed up as virtue. Let's call it what it really is, fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being rejected. Fear of confrontation. Fear of being labeled difficult or too much. Fear of not being loved if you dare to show the edges of who you are. That fear is powerful, it keeps you small. It teaches you to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that don't deserve you. You trade your truth for acceptance, your boundaries for belonging, your voice for approval. And little by little, you disappear. But I want you to pause here and ask yourself something uncomfortable. Who taught you that conflict was dangerous? Who made you believe that expressing yourself is wrong? Somewhere along the line, someone probably told you that peace means everyone smiling, that love means never disagreeing, that maturity means holding it all in. But that's not maturity, that's conditioning. Real maturity isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about learning to handle it with courage and respect. Here's the paradox, conflict isn't the enemy. Repressed conflict is. Honest confrontation, when done consciously, is a sign of self-respect. It says, I value this relationship enough to tell the truth. It says, I value myself enough to set a boundary. Without that, every relationship you have, personal, professional, romantic, becomes a performance. And you, the actor, keep playing the part of the agreeable one until one day you forget who you are when the curtain falls. And I get it. You don't want to hurt anyone. You don't want to be seen as rude or selfish. But here's the uncomfortable truth, saying what you feel isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And clarity is a form of kindness. People can't read your mind. They can't respect boundaries you never voiced. They can't honor a version of you they've never met because you keep it hidden under layers of politeness. Real peace doesn't come from pretending everything's fine. It comes from building relationships strong enough to hold the truth. So what does it look like to live differently? It starts small. The next time something feels wrong, don't swallow it. Name it. When you disagree, don't fake a smile. Speak your view respectfully, but firmly. When someone crosses your boundary, don't brush it off. Correct it, even if your voice trembles. Because every time you choose honesty over avoidance, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You start teaching the world how to treat you, not as someone who tolerates everything, but as someone who stands for something. And here's the most powerful part: when you stop performing politeness, you start living truthfully. You'll lose a few people, the ones who only liked you silent, but you'll gain something far more valuable: self-respect. That's the kind of peace that doesn't depend on approval, that doesn't vanish when someone disapproves of you. That's the kind of peace that lasts. So the next time you're tempted to stay quiet just to keep the calm, ask yourself, what am I sacrificing right now, peace or self-respect? Because one will fill you, and the other will hollow you out. We've spent too long mistaking submission for wisdom, silence for serenity, and fear for virtue. It's time to unlearn that lie. The world doesn't need more nice people who never speak up. It needs honest people with courage, people who can face discomfort, people who understand that true peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of integrity. And that begins with you. It begins the moment you decide your voice matters as much as anyone else's. It begins when you choose to stop betraying yourself in the name of keeping everyone else comfortable. You don't have to shout to be strong. You just have to stop whispering when you mean to speak. Because every time you tell the truth, even softly, you chip away at the culture of fake peace and build something real, a life anchored in authenticity, not fear. If you've ever wondered why it feels so unnatural to stand up for yourself, why it feels almost wrong to say no, it's because that hesitation was planted deep inside you long before you had a choice. You weren't born afraid of conflict. You learned it. It was handed down through centuries of conditioning, through families, schools, and churches that all whispered the same message: be good, be quiet, don't cause trouble. What if I told you that what you called good behavior might actually be a form of learned submission? That somewhere along the line, strength was rebranded as arrogance, and humility was turned into obedience. Let's take a closer look at where that came from. There was a time, long before social media, before corporate etiquette and HR departments, when strength wasn't something to apologize for. People admired those who stood tall, who fought for what they believed in, who didn't back down from confrontation. But over the centuries, something changed. A new moral code began to take shape, one that praised meekness and obedience over courage and individuality. It's what the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called slave morality. Don't let the harsh term throw you off. He wasn't talking about literal slavery. He was describing a mindset, a system of values built by those who felt powerless and learned to glorify that powerlessness. Think about it this way: once upon a time, the world belonged to those who acted, who shaped reality through will and vision. But not everyone could stand up and fight. Some didn't have the strength, others didn't have the courage. So instead of challenging the strong, they redefined what good meant. They said, strength is evil, pride is sin, power is dangerous. And in its place, they put values that made weakness look holy: humility, obedience, quiet endurance. It was a brilliant survival strategy, but it came with a cost. It taught people to shrink, to suppress their natural assertiveness, to see submission as virtue. Fast forward to today, and you can see the echoes everywhere. From the time you were a kid, you heard it: don't talk back, don't make a scene, be the bigger person. Maybe at school you were told to ignore the bully instead of standing up to him. Maybe at work you were told to just let it go when someone took credit for your ideas. Maybe in your relationships you were taught that keeping the peace is more important than being honest. This isn't random. It's the modern form of that same moral programming. We've been conditioned to believe that the absence of conflict equals goodness, when in reality it often equals submission. And here's the painful part: this isn't just about external control. It's about internalized control. Even when no one is forcing you to stay quiet, you do it automatically because your conscience has been trained to equate assertion with guilt. You tell yourself, I don't want to be rude, I don't want to hurt anyone, it's not worth the drama. But what you're really saying is, I'm afraid of my own power. You've learned to treat your will, your anger, your boundaries as something dangerous instead of sacred. This conditioning runs so deep that even when we admire strong people, we still judge them. How often have you heard someone say, "She's too assertive," or "He's too confident"? The subtext is clear: strength threatens the comfort of others. We'd rather call it arrogance than admit it exposes our own fear of being bold. And because of that, we keep ourselves in a moral cage, praising patience while dying inside from unspoken frustration. But let's stop and ask a bigger question: who benefits from this? Who gains when you're afraid to speak up? The truth is, entire systems, workplaces, governments, even families, run smoother when people don't question, when they comply, when they say yes out of habit. Your discomfort maintains someone else's comfort. Your silence protects their position. That's why this conditioning persists. It keeps everything predictable. And predictability, for those in control, is the safest thing in the world. The tragedy is that most people mistake this for virtue. They wear politeness like a badge of honor, not realizing it's a muzzle. They think being nice is a moral achievement, when often it's just fear in disguise. You can see it in the workplace, in marriages, in friendships, people pleasing themselves into invisibility. They think they're earning love and respect, but what they're really earning is burnout. You can't build real connection through suppression. You can't earn respect by pretending you don't have needs. And here's the twist: breaking free from this slave morality doesn't mean becoming aggressive or selfish. It means reclaiming your right to exist with full voice and full presence. It means realizing that assertiveness is not arrogance, it's alignment. When you express what you truly feel and want, you're not disrupting harmony, you're creating authenticity. And authenticity is the only real foundation for peace. So, how do you start to unlearn this conditioning? By catching yourself in those moments when you shrink. When you stop yourself from saying something true, ask, who taught me that silence is safety? When you feel guilty for setting a boundary, ask, whose approval am I afraid of losing? When you hesitate to take up space, ask, why do I believe my comfort matters less than theirs? Each question is a crack in the wall that's been built around your voice. You see, this isn't about rebelling against the world. It's about rebelling against the lie that strength is shameful. True humility isn't about staying small, it's about knowing your worth and choosing when to bow, not because you must, but because you decide to. That's power. That's freedom. So next time someone tells you to just let it go, don't automatically agree. Pause. Feel that tightening in your chest, that small flicker of fire that wants to speak. That's not anger, it's truth trying to breathe. You owe it to yourself to listen. Because every time you suppress that voice, you're not keeping peace, you're keeping yourself imprisoned in an outdated morality that no longer serves you. And maybe, just maybe, the moment you stop apologizing for your strength, you'll inspire others to do the same. Because courage is contagious. One person standing tall reminds everyone else that it's okay to stop crawling. And that, my friend, is how cultures change, not from silence, but from the sound of people remembering they were never meant to whisper in the first place. Let's talk about what happens when you stay quiet for too long. When you bite your tongue one more time, swallow one more truth, nod one more fake it's fine just to keep the peace. Because here's the reality, those unspoken words don't just vanish. They stay. They ferment. They turn into something heavier, darker, more corrosive than anger. They turn into resentment. And resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. It doesn't destroy them, it destroys you. You might tell yourself that staying calm makes you mature, that not reacting makes you noble. You might even wear your restraint like a badge of honor. I'm the bigger person, you say, as you let someone cross yet another line. But deep down, you know something's wrong. That tightening in your chest, that ache in your stomach, that restless thought that won't let you sleep, it's your body keeping score. It knows you're suppressing something alive, something that wants to be expressed but can't. And the longer you silence it, the more it festers. Resentment is trapped energy. It's the echo of all the no's you never said, all the boundaries you never defended, all the moments you needed to speak but didn't. Every time you walk away from a situation replaying the argument in your head, crafting the perfect comeback that never left your mouth, that's resentment talking. Every time you smile politely while someone disrespects you, and then later find yourself fantasizing about cutting them out of your life, that's resentment too. It's the energy of self-betrayal, and it doesn't disappear, it just moves underground, waiting for an outlet. And here's the cruel part. Because resentment can't move outward, it turns inward. It eats away at your confidence, your joy, your vitality. You start to feel drained, cynical, disconnected. You begin to believe that kindness is weakness, that people are untrustworthy, that nothing ever changes. But the real problem isn't the world, it's the war you're fighting inside yourself. You've divided your spirit into two halves, one that wants to scream, and one that keeps saying, don't. The result? Emotional paralysis. You can see it everywhere. In the spouse who says everything's fine while their smile cracks. In the employee who nods through endless meetings while secretly counting the days until they quit. In the friend who's always listening but never heard. They carry resentment like invisible luggage, heavy, silent, suffocating. They convince themselves they're keeping peace, but what they're really keeping is a slow-burning grudge against the world. But let's be honest, resentment isn't passive. It's active energy with nowhere to go. It leaks out in sarcasm, passive-aggressive comments, cold distance, quiet sabotage. It turns sweetness into bitterness, compassion into fatigue. You start resenting others for taking advantage of you, but really, you resent yourself for letting them. That's the truth nobody wants to face. You're not just a victim of other people's behavior, you're an accomplice to your own silence. And I get it. It's not easy to admit that. It's easier to say, they did this to me, than to ask, why did I let them? But that's where real freedom begins, in the moment you take responsibility for your participation in your own suffering. Because once you realize that resentment is a byproduct of avoided conflict, you start to see confrontation differently. It's no longer an act of aggression, it's an act of healing. It's the moment you stop letting anger rot inside you and allow it to become clarity. So, what's the antidote? It's not more patience. You've already tried that. It's not more forgiveness. You've probably overused that too. The antidote to resentment is self-expression. It's honesty. It's saying what's true when it needs to be said. It's trusting yourself enough to handle the discomfort of a real conversation instead of numbing yourself with fake harmony. Because the longer you avoid that discomfort, the more damage it does. Silence doesn't protect you, it corrodes you. And let's be real, resentment is seductive. It gives you a sense of moral superiority. I'm better because I don't stoop to their level. I'm stronger because I endure. But that's a lie your ego tells you to justify fear. You're not stronger for staying silent, you're just better at pretending. True strength isn't in enduring injustice, it's in naming it, facing it, and choosing how to respond consciously, not reactively. I know some of you might be thinking, but what if it's not worth the fight? What if speaking up makes things worse? Maybe it will. Maybe you'll lose someone's approval. Maybe you'll make someone uncomfortable. But ask yourself this, what's worse, an uncomfortable 5-minute conversation or a lifetime of suppressed anger? Because those swallowed words don't go away. They live in your tone, your posture, your energy. People feel them even if you never speak them. And that's the tragedy, resentment isolates you. It builds invisible walls. You stop trusting others because you never trusted yourself enough to speak. You stop feeling connected because you're too busy managing your unspoken emotions. And over time, you don't just resent others, you resent life itself. Everything starts to feel heavy, unfair, pointless. But life isn't punishing you. It's waiting for you to participate again, fully, with your voice, your boundaries, your truth. So here's a radical thought. Maybe conflict isn't what destroys relationships, maybe resentment is. Maybe the uncomfortable conversation you keep avoiding is the one that could save your marriage, your friendship, your peace of mind. Maybe the word no you're afraid to say is the one that could set you free. The truth is, resentment thrives where honesty dies. If you want to stop feeling bitter, stop pretending to be fine. Stop acting like silence is strength. It's not. It's self-erasure. And you weren't born to disappear. Start small. Speak up about little things before they become big ones. Let people feel your no, let them see your edges. You'll be surprised how the world adjusts when you stop making yourself invisible. And most importantly, you'll feel something shift inside you, the weight of resentment lifting, replaced by something fierce and clean, self-respect. Because at the end of the day, resentment is a symptom, not a sentence. It's a signal from your soul saying, I'm tired of pretending. Listen to it. Answer it. Give your anger somewhere honest to go. Because when you do, it stops being poison and becomes power. At some point, you get tired of living small. You get tired of smiling when something inside you is screaming. You get tired of carrying everyone else's comfort on your back while your own needs go unheard. That exhaustion you feel, it's not laziness, it's the weight of suppressed power. The truth is, you weren't meant to shrink. You were meant to expand. That's what Nietzsche called the will to power, not the hunger to dominate others, but the drive to fully become yourself. The will to power is life's natural impulse to grow, to rise, to push through resistance. It's what makes a flower break through concrete. It's what makes a human being stand up after being knocked down. It's what makes your soul whisper, there has to be more than this. But somewhere along the way, we learn to fear that impulse. We learn to associate power with danger. Maybe you grew up watching what happens to people who speak too loudly. Maybe you were told that ambition makes you selfish, that anger makes you unkind, that boundaries make you rude. You were taught that being good means being harmless. But harmlessness isn't goodness, it's compliance. Real goodness, the kind that changes the world, always comes from strength, not weakness. Let's get something straight. The will to power is not about control. It's not about stepping on others to get ahead. It's about reclaiming the control you've been giving away. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you hand over a piece of your power. Every time you stay silent just to keep the peace, you trade authenticity for approval. And when you do that long enough, you forget that power was ever yours to begin with. You start to believe you are at the mercy of circumstances, bosses, partners, life itself. But the truth is, your power never disappeared. It's just waiting for you to stop apologizing for it. You know that feeling when you finally stand up for yourself and your heart is pounding, but something inside you feels right, grounded, alive? That's your will to power coming back online. That's not aggression, it's alignment. It's the moment when your insides and your outsides match. When you no longer have to fake peace because you've built it on truth. That's what real power feels like, steady, clear, unapologetic. But of course, the first step is unlearning the lies that keep you from owning it. You've been told that assertiveness is arrogance. That saying no means you don't care. That standing your ground means you're difficult. Those are myths designed to keep you manageable. Society runs smoother when people are afraid to assert themselves. Workplaces prefer compliant employees over courageous ones. Families often reward silence over self-expression. But here's the paradox, everyone claims to admire confidence, they just don't want you to show it when it threatens their comfort. So they call you too much. You know what? Be too much. The world doesn't need smaller people. It needs people who are willing to live fully awake. Reclaiming your will to power starts with small acts of defiance against the voice that says, don't make waves. Speak up in the meeting. Tell your partner what you really need. Set the boundary you've been avoiding. Say no without explaining yourself. Each of these moments might feel terrifying at first, but they're not rebellion, they're rebalancing. You're simply restoring what was always yours, your right to exist without apology. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. The first time you speak up, your voice might shake. You might feel guilty for days. You might question whether you overreacted. That's just withdrawal from the addiction to pleasing others. You're detoxing from people approval. It's messy, but it's necessary. Because once you get through the discomfort, something incredible happens, you start to respect yourself again. And that self-respect becomes your anchor. You no longer chase validation, because you've found something stronger, your own authority. When Nietzsche talked about the will to power, he wasn't glorifying domination, he was describing vitality. Everything alive has an urge to assert itself. The seed pushes through the soil. The ocean reshapes the shore. The human spirit pushes against limitation. Suppress that impulse, and you suppress life itself. That's why people who avoid all conflict often feel empty. They've smothered their natural drive. They mistake stillness for peace when it's really stagnation. Peace without power is paralysis. So how do you reconnect with that inner force without turning into someone you don't want to be? You start by reframing conflict. Conflict isn't destruction, it's growth in motion. It's friction that sharpens edges and reveals truth. Every time you confront instead of avoid, you reclaim a bit more space for your real self. You don't have to yell. You don't have to fight. You just have to stop disappearing. Confrontation doesn't have to mean chaos, it can mean clarity. And here's something most people don't realize: the more comfortable you become with conflict, the less of it you actually have. Because when you carry yourself with self-respect, people sense it. They stop testing your boundaries. They stop mistaking your kindness for weakness. They start meeting you where you stand. Your energy changes, and the world responds accordingly. That's the quiet strength of someone who has reclaimed their will to power. They don't need to prove it, they embody it. But here's the final truth: the will to power isn't something you achieve. It's something you remember. It's already in you. It's been there since you took your first breath, since you learned to say your first no. Life, culture, and fear just layered over it until you forgot. Reclaiming it is less about becoming someone new and more about returning to who you've always been before the world told you to tone it down. So, the next time that little voice says, "Stay quiet, don't rock the boat," listen carefully. Beneath it, there's another voice, quieter but stronger, saying, "Speak. Move. Stand." That's your will to power. That's life itself calling you back. Answer it. Because the world doesn't need your silence. It needs your full, unapologetic presence, the kind that says, "I am here, and I'm not afraid to take up space." That's not domination. That's dignity. And it's time to claim it. There comes a moment when endurance stops feeling noble and starts feeling like suffocation. When you realize that carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations isn't strength, it's slavery with good manners. Nietzsche captured this transformation in one of the most powerful metaphors in philosophy: the three metamorphoses of the spirit, the camel, the lion, and the child. But this isn't just abstract philosophy. It's a map of your inner evolution. It's the story of how you stop living as a people pleaser and start living as a creator. Let's begin with the camel. The camel is the person who says yes to everything. It's the version of you that takes pride in endurance and carrying burdens without complaint. You work overtime because you don't want to let anyone down. You stay in relationships long past their expiration date because you're afraid of hurting someone. You suppress your opinions, your dreams, your limits, all in the name of being the good person. And society loves the camel. It rewards you for your compliance. You get applause for your patience, admiration for your sacrifices. But beneath the surface, something inside you starts to ache. Because while everyone sees you as strong, you know you're just surviving. The camel's strength is impressive, but sterile. It's the strength of endurance, not creation. It can carry heavy loads but doesn't choose where it's going. And the tragedy is that many people live and die in this stage, confusing obedience with virtue. They think suffering quietly makes them pure. But that's not purity, it's exhaustion dressed as morality. There comes a point when the camel can't take it anymore. When the weight of other people's expectations crushes its spirit. And in that breaking point, something miraculous happens: the camel revolts. That rebellion gives birth to the lion. The lion is the stage of awakening. It's when you finally start saying no, not out of anger, but out of truth. No to being used. No to being manipulated. No to the endless shoulds that have ruled your life. The lion roars not to destroy others, but to reclaim its territory. It's the first breath of freedom after years of suffocation. But make no mistake, this stage is messy. When you begin to assert yourself, people will push back. They'll call you selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. They'll miss the version of you that made them comfortable. But that's the price of freedom. You can't reclaim your life and keep everyone else's approval at the same time. Nietzsche said the lion must face the great dragon called Thou Shalt. It's covered in shimmering scales, and on each one is written a rule: you should always be nice. You should never argue. You should sacrifice yourself for others. You should never make people uncomfortable. Sound familiar? That dragon lives inside you. Every time you feel guilty for setting a boundary, it's breathing down your neck. To slay it, you have to recognize that not every shit is sacred. Many are just old voices trying to keep you tame. The lion doesn't destroy for the sake of destruction, it clears space. It creates the silence in which your true voice can finally be heard. But the lion is not the end of the journey. Once you've fought for your freedom, once you've learned to say no, you face a new challenge. What will you do with that freedom? That's where the child appears. The child is the spirit reborn. It's the part of you that no longer needs to fight to exist because it simply does. It's the energy of creation, spontaneity, curiosity. The child doesn't carry burdens like the camel or roar like the lion. It plays. It invents. It creates its own values. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you don't need to prove your worth anymore. You don't need to justify your boundaries or explain your desires. You simply live according to what feels true. That's the state of the child. It's light. It's free. It's authentic. And ironically, it's what most of us were before the world trained us out of it. We were all born as that child, curious, bold, unapologetic. Then came the rules, the expectations, the shoulds. And now, our adult life is the process of finding our way back. The child stage is where you stop reacting and start creating. You are no longer defined by what you reject, you are defined by what you choose. Conflict becomes less about defense and more about discovery. You stop asking, how do I avoid upsetting people, and start asking, what do I want to build with my life? You no longer measure yourself by how much you endure, but by how deeply you live. And that's when real peace appears, not the fake peace of silence, but the peace of self-trust. The journey from camel to lion to child isn't linear. You'll cycle through them again and again. Some days you'll carry weight that isn't yours. Other days you'll roar louder than you intended. But every time you face those moments consciously, you're moving closer to that child, your truest self. You're peeling off the layers of fear, guilt, and conformity that kept you small. Think about it. How many of your decisions are still made by the camel in you, trying to please everyone? How many of your boundaries are guarded by the lion, still defensive, still afraid of rejection? And how often does the child inside you even get a chance to speak? The goal isn't to kill the camel or silence the lion. It's to integrate them. To let the camel's endurance become purpose, the lion's defiance become courage, and the child's creativity become life. So when someone says, "You've changed," take it as a compliment. It means the camel in you has put down the load. The lion has roared its truth. And the child, you, is finally breathing freely. That's not rebellion. That's evolution. The question is, where are you right now? Still carrying the weight? Still fighting the dragon? Or have you started creating something of your own? Because here's the truth, you can't skip the struggle. You can't bypass the roar. But if you stay with it, if you face every stage with honesty and courage, you'll find something far greater than peace. You'll find yourself. And once you taste that freedom, you'll never go back to being anyone's camel again. Let's talk about the price of silence. Because make no mistake, there is always a price. Every time you tell yourself it's not worth it, every time you stay quiet to keep the peace, every time you swallow what you really think just to avoid discomfort, you're paying for it with something far more valuable than harmony. You're paying with your dignity. You're paying with your self-respect. You're paying with the slow erosion of who you are. We've been trained to believe that silence is noble. That turning the other cheek makes us wise. That peace means avoiding conflict at any cost. But here's the truth, silence isn't neutral. It's a message. When you stay quiet in the face of disrespect, you're teaching people how to treat you. You're showing them that your boundaries are optional, that your feelings are negotiable, that they can cross your lines without consequence. And once you've taught someone that lesson, they'll keep taking, because why wouldn't they? You've told them it's safe to. Think back on your life. How many moments of injustice did you endure just to keep the peace? How many times did you tell yourself, I'll let it go this time? How many times did this time turn into a habit, and that habit into a personality trait? You started calling it patience, kindness, maturity. But deep down, you knew it was fear. Fear of confrontation. Fear of rejection. Fear of losing people who were perfectly fine with you losing yourself. That kind of silence doesn't build peace, it builds resentment. And the longer you carry that resentment, the heavier it gets. You start to believe that life is unfair, that people are cruel, that the world takes advantage of good hearts. But it's not just the world, it's you. You're complicit in your own suppression. Every time you choose silence over truth, you tighten the chains around your own freedom. You start living a smaller life, one where you measure every word, filter every feeling, and call that control. But it's not control, it's fear with good PR. Now, I'm not saying you should go around picking fights or shouting to be heard. That's not strength, that's insecurity wearing a costume. What I'm talking about is the courage to stand in truth even when it shakes you. To speak calmly but firmly when something crosses your line. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision that your self-respect matters more than your comfort. And here's the thing about courage, it's contagious. Every time you speak up, you give silent people permission to find their voices too. The world desperately needs more of that kind of courage. Look around, families, workplaces, communities. How many problems exist simply because no one wants to be the first to say what everyone knows? We're so addicted to being liked that we settle for being invisible. We think staying quiet keeps us safe, but silence doesn't protect you, it isolates you. It makes you a stranger in your own life. And the irony is, the people who love you most can't truly love you if they've never met the real you. Silence also feeds systems bigger than us. Injustice survives on silence. Abuse survives on silence. Corruption, manipulation, oppression, they all thrive when good people decide to stay out of it. We tell ourselves we're being wise, but really, we're being complicit. Because silence isn't peacekeeping, it's permission. And every time you turn away from something wrong, you reinforce it. You strengthen it. You help it grow. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. How much longer will you keep protecting other people's comfort at the expense of your own integrity? How many more times will you call fear kindness just to avoid rocking the boat? You say you value honesty, but when was the last time you were honest with yourself? Because deep down, you know. You know the conversation you've been avoiding. You know the boundary you've been too afraid to set. You know the situation that's been eating at you because your silence has become a prison. And here's the thing, breaking that silence doesn't mean shouting or burning bridges. It means reclaiming your right to exist out loud. It means saying, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I will and will not tolerate. It's not about controlling others, it's about respecting yourself enough to show up fully. You might lose some people in the process. But the ones you lose were never truly with you. The ones who stay, the ones who see your strength and still choose you, those are your people. That's real connection. Nietzsche once said that silence in the face of injustice is not virtue, it's cowardice. And he was right. You can't build a meaningful life on the foundation of avoidance. Because sooner or later, the weight of your unspoken words will crush you. The anger you repress will turn inward. You'll start resenting yourself for all the times you stayed small. But here's the hope, it's never too late to change that. You can start today. You can draw your first real line and stand behind it. You can say no and mean it. You can tell the truth even when your voice trembles. That trembling doesn't mean weakness, it means you're waking up. Every time you speak up, even just a little, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You remind the world, and yourself, that your voice matters. And the more you practice, the stronger you get, until one day, speaking truth feels as natural as breathing. So ask yourself right now, what would my life look like if I stopped being afraid of conflict? Who would I become if I stopped apologizing for my existence? Because that version of you, the one who stands tall, who speaks clearly, who lives in integrity, that's the real you. That's who you were before the fear, before the conditioning, before you learned to hide. The time for silence is over. The world doesn't need your compliance, it needs your courage. It needs people who are willing to tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Because truth is the only thing strong enough to build real peace. So don't whisper anymore. Speak. Even if your voice shakes. Even if your words are messy. Speak. Because every time you do, you not only free yourself, you light a path for others to follow. And that, my friend, is how real change begins. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below, I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.